The champagne glass slipped from my fingers when I saw my wife's hand disappear under Derek Mallory's jacket at the rehearsal dinner bar. Not a friendly pat, not an innocent touch. Her fingers traced the line of his belt, lingering just long enough to make my chest tighten with something between nausea and rage. I caught the glass before it hit the ground, muscle memory from 12 years of surgical precision, keeping my hands steady, even as my world tilted sideways. The burn unit was calling again, third time tonight, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't stop watching my wife of 8 years flirt with the man who was supposed to marry her best friend tomorrow. Dr. Bishop? The voice belonged to someone behind me, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. The patient in bed 7 is asking for you specifically. I turned, forcing my face into the calm mask I'd perfected during residency. The nurse, young, eager, probably expecting me to drop everything and rush to the hospital like I always did, like the dedicated doctor who never missed a call, never said no, never put his personal life first. Tell them, I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. The nurse nodded and hurried away. When I looked back at the bar, Alana and Derek had vanished. Again. Third time tonight they'd disappeared together, leaving me to make excuses to Brina about where her fiancé had gone. You look like someone just told you your favorite patient died. I turned to find Nolan Peters leaning against the rooftop railing, a ginger ale in his hand instead of the whiskey he used to prefer. Brina's older brother had been sober for 8 months now, and sobriety had made him dangerously observant. Just work, I said, pulling out my phone to check the missed calls. Emergency surgery? On a Friday night? Nolan took a sip of his drink, studying me with the intensity of someone who'd spent years lying to himself and could now spot deception from a mile away. Must be serious. They all are. Sure they are. He set his glass down and moved closer, lowering his voice. Can I ask you something, Conrad? Man to man? I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time tonight. Nolan had always been the black sheep of the Peters family, the dependent, the disappointment, the one who couldn't get his life together. But 8 months clean had sharpened him, made him see things the rest of us were too polite or too blind to acknowledge. Go ahead. How long have you known? The question hit me like a scalpel between the ribs, precise and devastating. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, to play dumb, to maintain the facade that everything was fine. But something in his eyes stopped me. Known what? Nolan glanced around the rooftop, making sure we were alone. The other guests were clustered around the far end, laughing at something Derek's father was saying. Brina stood in the center of the group, radiant in her rehearsal dress, completely oblivious to the fact that her world was about to implode. About my sister's best friend and my sister's fiancé. Nolan's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. About how they've been screwing each other for the past 4 months. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I felt something shift inside my chest, a tectonic plate moving after years of pressure. Not surprised, that had already happened at the bar. This was something else. Something colder. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Nolan finished his drink and set the empty glass on the railing. Look, I get it. You don't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it either when I first saw them together at that dental conference in Boston 3 months ago. Figured it was just a coincidence, you know? Old friends catching up. Boston. Alana had gone to Boston for a nursing seminar in March. She'd come back talking about how boring it was, how she'd spent most of the time in her hotel room reading. But then I saw them at the Marriott downtown last month, Nolan continued. And again 2 weeks ago at that little cottage Derek rents out by the lake, the one he thinks nobody knows about. My phone buzzed again. The burn unit, the patient who needed me, who was counting on me to drop everything and rush to their bedside. For 12 years, I'd never said no, never put anything ahead of my responsibilities as a doctor. Tonight, I let it go to voicemail. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Nolan was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights spread below us. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost gentle. Because I know what it's like to be the last one to figure out that your life is a lie, he said. And because tomorrow my sister is going to marry a man who's been cheating on her with her best friend. Someone needs to stop that from happening. And you think that someone is me? I think you're the only one who can. Before I could respond, Alana appeared at my elbow like a ghost materializing from the shadows. She was breathless, her hair slightly mussed, a flush in her cheeks that I'd once found beautiful and now made my stomach turn. "There you are," she said, slipping her arm through mine with practiced ease. "Brina's looking for you. She wants to thank you for the speech you're giving tomorrow." The speech? Right. I'd volunteered to toast the happy couple during the reception, had spent weeks crafting the perfect words about love and commitment and the sacred bond of marriage. The irony was so sharp it could have cut glass. "Of course," I said, my voice steady. "I should go find her." Alana smiled up at me, the same smile that had made me fall in love with her 10 years ago. Beautiful, warm, completely convincing. How long had she been lying to me? How many times had she looked at me with that same expression while planning her next secret meeting with Derek? "You're the best husband," she said, rising on her toes to kiss my cheek. "I'm so lucky to have you." The kiss felt like acid on my skin. I smiled back at her. The same automatic response I'd been giving for months without really thinking about it. But something had changed in the past 5 minutes. Some fundamental shift that made everything look different, feel different. "I'm the lucky one," I said. As she walked away, her hips swaying in the red dress I'd bought for her birthday, I felt Nolan's eyes on me. "You need proof," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I need proof," I agreed. "I can get you proof." He pulled a business card from his wallet and handed it to me. "But first, let me ask you something else. What are you planning to do with it once you have it?" I looked down at the card. Marcy Rhodes, Paralegal Services. A phone number and an email address, nothing more. "I don't know yet." "Well, you better figure it out fast," Nolan said. "Because once you open this door, you can't close it again. And trust me, you're going to want to have a plan." My phone buzzed one more time. The burn unit still waiting for me to call back, still expecting me to drop everything and rush to the hospital like the reliable, predictable Dr. Conrad Bishop they'd always known. I looked across the rooftop at my wife, who was now standing close to Derek again, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. Brina was on the other side of the group, showing off her engagement ring to someone's aunt, completely unaware that her fiancé was planning his next rendezvous with her best friend. For 12 years, I'd been the man everyone could count on. The doctor who never missed a call, the husband who never asked questions, the friend who never caused trouble. Reliable? Predictable? Safe. Tonight, that man died. I dialed the burn unit's number and waited for them to answer. "This is Dr. Bishop," I said when the attending picked up. "I won't be able to make it tonight. You'll need to call Dr. Martinez." There was a pause on the other end. In 12 years, I'd never turned down an emergency call. "Is everything all right, doctor?" "Everything's fine," I said, watching Derek's hand brush against Alana's lower back as they moved toward the elevator. "I just have something more important to take care of." I hung up and turned to Nolan, who was watching me with something that might have been respect. "When can you get me that proof?" "Give me 48 hours, he said. "But Conrad, once I do this, there's no going back. You sure you're ready for that?" I thought about the past 8 years of marriage, the late nights when Alana claimed to be working overtime, the conferences she attended alone, the new clothes, the new perfume, the subtle distance that had crept into our relationship so gradually I'd barely noticed it happening. I thought about the man I'd been an hour ago, trusting, forgiving, willing to believe the best in everyone. That man would have confronted Alana directly, would have given her a chance to explain, would have tried to work things out through counseling and compromise. But that man was naive, weak, blind to the truth that everyone else could see. "I'm ready," I said. Nolan nodded and disappeared into the crowd, leaving me alone on the rooftop with the city lights and the sound of laughter from my wife's farewell party. Because that's what this was, really. A farewell party for the man I used to be. Tomorrow was Brina and Derek's wedding. In less than 24 hours, I would stand up in front of 200 people and deliver a speech about love and commitment, while my wife sat in the front row, probably thinking about the next time she could sneak away with the groom. But tonight, I had work to do. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychiatrist I'd worked with on several cases involving trauma patients. We'd had drinks a few times, talked shop, developed the kind of professional friendship that comes from understanding each other's work. She answered on the second ring. "Conrad, this is a surprise. How are you feeling about tomorrow's big event?" Actually, that's why I'm calling, I said, moving to a quieter corner of the rooftop. I need to ask you something confidential about psychology. There was a pause. Okay, what kind of psychology? Narcissistic behavior patterns. Specifically, how to identify them and, I hesitated, choosing my words carefully, how to use that knowledge strategically. Another pause, longer this time. Conrad, are we talking about a patient here? Because if we are, we're not talking about a patient. I see. Her voice became more cautious. Can you be more specific about what you need to know? I looked across the rooftop at Derek, who was now standing with his arm around Brina, while Alana watched from a few feet away. The perfect picture of a happy couple and their supportive friend. I need to know how to destroy someone, I said quietly. Someone who thinks they're smarter than everyone else. Someone who's been manipulating people for months and getting away with it. Conrad, Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Whatever's going on, maybe we should talk about this in person, face to face. No time, I said. I need the information tonight. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, professional, clinical. Narcissists have predictable vulnerabilities, she said. Their need for admiration makes them reckless. They assume others are less intelligent than they are, so they get sloppy with their lies. They can't resist taking credit for their successes, even when discretion would be smarter. What's the best way to expose them? You don't expose them, Sarah said. You let them expose themselves. Create situations where their natural tendencies work against them. Give them enough rope, and they'll hang themselves. And if I wanted to, accelerate that process? Another long pause. Conrad, I'm your friend, so I'm going to say this once. Whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with the consequences. Because once you start down this path, you can't undo what you've done. I understand. Do you? Because revenge isn't just about hurting the people who hurt you. It changes you too, permanently. I watched Derek lean down to whisper something in Brina's ear. She laughed and swatted him playfully, completely trusting, completely innocent. Tomorrow, she would walk down the aisle believing she was marrying a man who loved her. I'm already changed, I said. After I hung up, I stood alone on the rooftop for another 10 minutes, watching the party wind down around me. Guests were starting to leave, citing early morning preparations for the wedding. Derek's parents said their goodbyes first, his father clapping him on the shoulder and making jokes about his last night of freedom. If only he knew. Alana appeared at my side again, this time carrying her purse and wrap. Ready to go? She asked. I'm exhausted. Of course. I smiled at her, the same smile I'd been giving her for 8 years. Long day tomorrow. The longest, she agreed. But there was something in her voice, excitement maybe, or anticipation. We said our goodbyes to Brina and Derek, exchanging hugs and last-minute details about the ceremony. Derek shook my hand with both of his, looking me directly in the eye. Thanks for everything, Conrad, he said. The speech tomorrow, covering for me at the hospital last week. You're a real friend. Anything for the happy couple, I replied. As we waited for the elevator, I noticed Alana checking her phone. A quick glance, then a small smile before she slipped it back into her purse. Work? I asked. Just Brina, she said without missing a beat. She's nervous about tomorrow. The elevator arrived and we stepped inside with 3 other couples from the party. As the doors closed, I caught Nolan's eye through the gap. He nodded once, a silent confirmation of our agreement. 48 hours. The ride to our house passed in comfortable silence. Alana dozed against my shoulder while I drove, her breathing slow and steady. For a moment, I almost convinced myself that Nolan was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation for what I'd seen tonight. But then I remembered the way her fingers had traced Derek's belt at the bar, the flush in her cheeks when she'd reappeared after their disappearance, the text message that had made her smile in the elevator. By the time we pulled into our driveway, any lingering doubts had evaporated. Home sweet home, Alana murmured, stretching as I turned off the engine. Our house was a modest 2-story colonial in one of the better neighborhoods, nothing flashy, but respectable. I'd bought it 3 years ago with money from my signing bonus at the hospital, had put the deed in my mother's name for tax reasons Alana had never questioned. Smart woman, my mother, always thinking 3 steps ahead. I'm going to shower, Alana said as we walked through the front door. Wash off all that cigarette smoke from the bar. Good idea. I have some emails to catch up on. She kissed me on the cheek, The same spot she'd kissed an hour ago, but now it felt different, calculated, routine maintenance on the husband who paid the bills and asked no questions. "Don't stay up too late," she said. "Big day tomorrow." I watched her climb the stairs, her red dress swishing around her legs. In the morning, she would put on her maid of honor dress and stand beside her best friend as Brina married the man Alana had been sleeping with. She would smile for photos and give a speech about love and friendship and the importance of supporting each other through thick and thin, the performance of a lifetime. While the shower ran upstairs, I went to my home office and opened my laptop. Alana and I shared an iCloud account. Had for years, ever since she'd asked me to help her set up her first iPhone. She'd never been particularly tech-savvy, had relied on me to handle all the digital aspects of our life together. Another oversight that was about to cost her. I navigated to the photo sharing folder and scrolled through the recent uploads. Most of them were innocuous. Pictures from work, screenshots of recipes she wanted to try, selfies with friends. But then I found something that made my blood freeze. A video file uploaded 3 days ago, 6 seconds long. I clicked play and watched my wife enter a hotel room with a man in a tuxedo. The camera angle only showed his back, but there was something hanging from his wrist, a conference badge. I paused the video and zoomed in on the badge. The text was blurry, but I could make out enough letters to piece together the words Northeast Dental Association Annual Conference, the same conference Derek had attended 3 days ago in Boston. I saved the video to my desktop and kept scrolling. There were more files, dozens of them, all uploaded over the past 4 months. Photos of restaurant receipts from places I'd never been. Screenshots of text conversations with someone identified only as D. Pictures of lingerie I'd never seen her wear. My hands were shaking by the time I finished cataloging everything. Not from anger, that would come later. This was something else. A kind of clinical fascination with the scope of the deception. 4 months. She'd been planning this for 4 months, documenting it like a teenager with her first crush. Photos and videos and text conversations, all saved to our shared account because she never thought I'd look. Because I never had looked. In 8 years of marriage, I'd never once checked her phone or her email or her social media. I'd trusted her completely, given her the kind of faith that apparently made me an idiot. But not anymore. I spent the next hour going through everything systematically, creating folders, organizing files, building a timeline. The shower had stopped running 20 minutes ago, and I could hear Alana moving around upstairs, getting ready for bed. "Conrad?" Her voice drifted down from the bedroom. "Are you coming up soon?" "Just finishing up," I called back. 5 more minutes. I saved everything to a secure folder and password protected it, then cleared the browser history and closed the laptop. When I finally went upstairs, Alana was already in bed, reading a romance novel on her tablet. "Good book?" I asked as I got undressed. "Terrible book," she said with a laugh. "But sometimes that's exactly what you need." I brushed my teeth and washed my face, going through the same routine I'd followed for thousands of nights. But everything felt different now. The toothbrush in my hand, the face in the mirror, even the sound of Alana turning pages behind me. When I climbed into bed beside her, she set the tablet aside and turned toward me. "I'm really proud of you," she said, her voice soft in the darkness. "For what?" "The speech tomorrow. Taking time to help Brina and Derek with their wedding. You're such a good friend." I rolled onto my side to face her, studying her expression in the dim light from the hallway. She looked sincere, loving. If I hadn't seen the video, hadn't read the text messages, I would have believed every word. "They deserve to be happy," I said. "They do." She leaned closer and kissed me, her lips soft and familiar. "And so do we." After she fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and thinking about the next 46 hours. Tomorrow, there would be a wedding. Brina would walk down the aisle in her white dress, believing she was marrying a faithful man. Derek would stand at the altar, probably thinking about his next secret meeting with Alana, and I would give my speech about love and commitment while my wife sat in the front row, counting down the minutes until she could sneak away with the groom. But I wouldn't let that happen. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. The next morning started like any other Saturday, except for the subtle electricity in the air that comes with important events. Alana was up early, bustling around the house with the kind of nervous energy that used to make me smile. "The florist is delivering the bouquets at 10, she said, checking items off a handwritten list. "Hair and makeup starts at 11, photos at 2, ceremony at 4. "Sounds like you have everything under control." I hope so. She paused in front of the hall mirror to check her appearance. Brina's been dreaming about this day since we were kids. Everything has to be perfect. Perfect. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. I'm sure it will be, I said. You've put a lot of work into this. More than she knew. My phone rang as I was finishing breakfast. The hospital. Probably wondering why I'd missed the emergency call last night. I let it go to voicemail and finished my coffee while Alana gathered her things for the day. I probably won't see you until the ceremony, she said, kissing me goodbye. The bridal suite is going to be chaos. I'll be fine. I have some errands to run anyway. After she left, I called Nolan. Please tell me you have something, I said when he answered. I have something. Meet me at the coffee shop on Elm Street in an hour. The coffee shop was busy with the Saturday morning crowd, families and couples enjoying leisurely breakfasts. Nolan had claimed a corner table in the back, away from the main flow of traffic. You look like hell, he said when I sat down. Didn't sleep much. I can imagine. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Everything you need is in there. Photos, receipts, hotel records. 4 months' worth of documentation. I opened the envelope and glanced at the contents. Professional quality surveillance photos, credit card statements, even what looked like a key card from the cottage Derek rented. How did you get all this? I told you, I've been watching them for months, and I have friends who specialize in finding information people don't want found. Nolan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. The question is, what are you going to do with it? I closed the envelope and met his eyes. I'm going to stop the wedding. How? I'm going to tell Brina the truth. Nolan was quiet for a moment, studying my face. And then what? Then I'm going to destroy them both. He nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting that answer. Good, he said. They deserve it. We parted ways outside the coffee shop. Nolan was headed to the church to help with setup, and I had my own preparations to make. The wedding was in 6 hours, which gave me just enough time to execute the first phase of my plan. I drove to Marcy Rhodes' office, a small suite in a professional building downtown. She was waiting for me, despite it being Saturday morning. Nolan Peters called me last night, she said as I sat down across from her desk. He said you might need some help with a legal matter. Marcy was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and professionally dressed despite the weekend. Divorced, Nolan had mentioned. Bitter about her ex-husband's infidelity. The perfect ally for what I had in mind. I need to file for separation, I said. Today. That's unusual timing. She opened a legal pad and picked up a pen. Most people don't file divorce papers on their friend's wedding day. I have my reasons. I'm sure you do. She started taking notes. What kind of separation are we talking about? Just a formal document, or do you want to include asset protection? Asset protection. Everything we own jointly, I want transferred into a trust. That's going to take some time to set up properly. I've already started the process. I pulled out a folder of documents I'd prepared over the past few months. Financial records, property deeds, investment statements. I just need someone to file the paperwork. Marcy looked through the documents, her eyebrows rising as she took in the scope of what I was asking. This is very thorough, she said. How long have you been planning this? Longer than I realized. It took 3 hours to get everything filed and submitted. By the time I left Marcy's office, Alana Bishop was legally separated from her husband and had no claim to any of our joint assets. She just didn't know it yet. The church was already busy with wedding preparations when I arrived at 2 o'clock. Flowers everywhere, white ribbons on the pews, photographers setting up their equipment. The kind of fairy tale wedding that little girls dream about and grown women spend months planning. Too bad it was built on a foundation of lies. I found Derek in the groom's preparation room, adjusting his tie in front of a full-length mirror. He looked nervous, which was understandable. Getting married was a big step, especially when you were planning to continue cheating on your wife with her best friend. Conrad, he turned and smiled, extending his hand. Thanks for coming early. I wanted to thank you again for covering that surgery last week. No problem. I shook his hand, noting the slight tremor in his grip. Nervous? Terrified, he admitted with a laugh. But good terrified, you know? I know exactly what you mean. We made small talk for a few more minutes, discussing the ceremony timeline and the reception afterward. Derek mentioned that he and Brina were leaving for their honeymoon in Hawaii the next morning, a 2-week trip to some resort on Maui. 2 weeks of paradise, he said. No work, no responsibilities, just me and my beautiful wife. Sounds perfect, I said. You'll have to send us pictures. As I left the groom's room, I passed the bridal suite and heard laughter spilling out from behind the closed door. Alana's voice, bright and animated, probably telling some story about our own wedding 8 years ago. I wondered if she was thinking about Derek while she helped her best friend get ready to marry him. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I had to admit. Brina looked radiant in her white dress, walking down the aisle on her father's arm while the string quartet played something classical and romantic. Derek stood at the altar with tears in his eyes, playing the part of the devoted groom to perfection. Alana stood beside Brina as maid of honor, wearing a deep blue dress that complemented her dark hair. She looked stunning, and I felt a familiar pang of the attraction that had drawn me to her all those years ago. But then I remembered the video on our shared iCloud account, and the pang turned into something else entirely. The vows were traditional, nothing too personal or revealing. Derek promised to love, honor, and cherish Brina for the rest of his life. Brina promised to stand by him through sickness and health, for better or worse. I wondered how long those promises would last once the truth came out. The reception was held at the country club, an elegant venue with crystal chandeliers and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the golf course. The happy couple made their grand entrance to thunderous applause, then launched into their first dance as husband and wife. I watched from my table, nursing a whiskey and thinking about the flash drive in my jacket pocket, the one containing all the evidence Nolan had gathered, plus a few additions of my own. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced as the first dance ended, "we'd like to invite Dr. Conrad Bishop to the stage to give a toast to the happy couple." This was it, the moment I'd been planning for the past 18 hours. I walked to the front of the room, accepting the microphone from the DJ. 200 faces turned toward me, expectant and smiling. Brina and Derek stood together at the head table, his arm around her waist, both of them glowing with happiness. Alana sat at the table just below the stage, looking up at me with pride. Her husband, the respected doctor, about to deliver a heartfelt speech about love and marriage. If only she knew what was coming. "Thank you," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "Before I begin, I want to say how honored I am to be here today, celebrating the union of two people who clearly love each other very much." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I've known Derek for 5 years now, ever since he started referring patients to me at the hospital. He's a skilled dentist, a charming dinner companion, and apparently quite the romantic. Just ask my wife. She's spent quite a bit of time with him lately, discussing the finer points of mouth care. A few chuckles from the audience. Alana smiled up at me, probably thinking I was building up to some clever joke. "In fact," I continued, "Alana has become quite the expert on Derek's technique. She's observed him work up close, watched his hands move, even helped him with some of his more challenging cases." The laughter was getting a bit confused now. People weren't sure where this was going. But that's what good friends do, isn't it? They support each other. They keep each other's secrets. They cover for each other when necessary. I paused, letting my eyes sweep across the room before settling on Derek's face. He was starting to look uncomfortable, probably wondering why I was talking about him and Alana instead of him and Brina. "Which brings me to my actual toast," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket. "But first, I think the bride deserves to know exactly who she married today." I pulled out the flash drive and held it up for everyone to see. "Brina," I said, looking directly at her. "I'm sorry to do this on your wedding day, but you deserve the truth." The room had gone completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "This flash drive contains 4 months of evidence documenting your husband's affair with my wife. Hotel receipts, photographs, text messages, even video footage of them together. I thought you should see it before you go on your honeymoon." The silence stretched for another heartbeat, and then chaos erupted. Derek lunged toward the stage, his face red with rage. "You son of a witch! How dare you!" But Brina held up her hand, stopping him mid-sentence. Her face was pale but composed, and when she spoke, her voice was steady. "Give me the drive." I walked over and placed it in her hand. She looked at it for a moment, then looked at Derek. "Is it true?" Derek opened his mouth, probably to deny everything, but something in her expression must have warned him off. Instead, he just stood there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Is it true?" she asked again, her voice getting harder. This time, Derek nodded. Brina stood up slowly, still in her wedding dress, still wearing her veil. She looked around the room at all the guests, all the family and friends who had come to celebrate what they thought was the happiest day of her life. Then she turned back to Derek and slapped him across the face so hard the sound echoed through the silent room. "You will never touch me again," she said quietly. Then she walked out of the reception hall, her heels clicking on the marble floor, leaving 200 stunned guests and one destroyed groom in her wake. The aftermath was predictably chaotic. Derek's parents were shouting at me, demanding to know who I thought I was and how I dared ruin their son's wedding. Alana was crying, alternating between apologizing to the remaining guests and screaming at me for humiliating her in public. But I wasn't done yet. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, which was still live, "before you leave, there's one more thing you should see." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the reception's audio-visual system. Within seconds, the large screens around the room lit up with a video montage I'd prepared that morning. Silent footage of Alana and Derek entering the lake cottage on 4 different occasions. Date stamps clearly visible in the corner. Audio recordings of their phone conversations, including one where Alana laughed about how clueless Brina was and how easy it had been to fool her. But the final clip was the most damaging. Derek and Alana in bed together, her voice clearly audible as she mocked her best friend. "She actually asked me if I thought Derek was satisfied with their bed life," Alana's recorded voice said. "I told her he seemed happy, but honestly, I was just curious to find out for myself." The room erupted again, but this time the anger was directed at the right targets. Brina's family was surrounding Derek, her father looking like he wanted to commit homicide. My colleagues from the hospital were staring at Alana with disgust and disappointment. In the space of 5 minutes, both of them had gone from respected members of the community to social pariahs. But I still wasn't finished. As the reception dissolved into chaos, I quietly slipped out and drove to the hospital. I had one more stop to make before the day was over. The administrative offices were mostly empty on Saturday evening, but I had my own key card and access to the files I needed. It took me less than an hour to compile everything. Derek's falsified surgical logs, the complaints about his ghosting procedures, the evidence of patient poaching using illegally obtained medical records. I packaged it all together with a detailed cover letter and left it on the desk of the chief medical officer. By Monday morning, Derek Mallory would be facing a formal investigation by the medical board. His career was over. On my way home, I stopped by the lake cottage Derek had been renting. The key Nolan had provided still worked, and I let myself in to plant one final piece of evidence. I placed copies of Alana's nursing school transcripts on the coffee table, the ones showing the falsified internship logs I'd helped her cover up 5 years ago. Tomorrow, those documents would find their way to the state nursing board. When I finally arrived home, the house was dark. Alana's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was probably at her sister's place or some hotel, licking her wounds and trying to figure out how her perfect plan had imploded so spectacularly. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my home office, staring at the computer screen where I'd first discovered the evidence of her betrayal less than 24 hours ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. My phone rang around midnight, Alana's number. "Conrad!" Her voice was hoarse from crying. "We need to talk. Do we? Please, I know you're angry, but we can work this out. It was a mistake, a stupid mistake, and I'm sorry. But we've been together for 8 years. That has to count for something." I took a sip of whiskey and said nothing. "Conrad, are you there?" "I'm here." "Where am I supposed to go? You humiliated me in front of everyone we know." "My job, my friends, my reputation. You destroyed everything." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone else could see it." "This isn't you," she said, and I could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. "You're not cruel. You're not vindictive. You're the man who forgives people, who gives second chances. Remember when I screwed up in nursing school? You helped me fix it. You believed in me. That was my mistake. Conrad, please, let me ask you something, Alana. When you were in that hotel room with Derek, when you were planning your next secret meeting, when you were laughing about how stupid Brina was, did you think about me at all? Did you consider what it would do to our marriage? To your friendship with Brina? To Derek's upcoming wedding?" Silence. "Or were you just thinking about yourself? About what you wanted? What you could get away with? What made you feel good in the moment?" "It wasn't like that," she whispered. "What was it like?" "I don't know. I was confused and he was charming and it just happened." For 4 months? It just happened for 4 months? More silence. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and clinical. You're going to find somewhere else to live because this house belongs to my mother. You're going to find a new job because the nursing board is going to revoke your license when they find out about those falsified logs from nursing school. And you're going to stay away from me because as of yesterday afternoon, we're legally separated, and I never want to see you again. You can't do this, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. I already have. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings and professional fallout. Derek's medical license was suspended pending investigation, and his dental practice collapsed within days as patients fled and his partners distanced themselves from the scandal. Brina filed for annulment immediately, citing fraud and emotional manipulation. The legal fees and settlement costs wiped out most of Derek's savings, and his parents disowned him after the extent of his deception became public. Alana's nursing license was revoked, just as I'd predicted, and she was forced to move back in with her parents in another state. The last I heard, she was working as a waitress and trying to rebuild her life from scratch. As for me, I went back to work, back to my patients, back to the routine of being the reliable Dr. Conrad Bishop that everyone could count on. But something fundamental had changed. The naive man who trusted everyone and gave infinite second chances was gone, replaced by someone harder and more calculating. I didn't miss him. 3 months after the wedding that never was, I was having dinner at a restaurant downtown when I spotted a familiar figure at the bar. Nolan Peters, nursing what looked like a ginger ale and reading a book. I walked over and sat down beside him. "How's sobriety treating you?" I asked. He looked up and smiled. "Better than expected. How's revenge treating you?" "Same." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two men who had made difficult choices and lived with the consequences. "Any regrets?" Nolan asked. I thought about it for a moment. About Alana crying into the phone that night. About Derek's career in ruins. About Brina having to start over after having her entire future destroyed. "No," I said. "No regrets. Good." Nolan closed his book and signaled the bartender for another drink. "Because Brina wanted me to give you something." He handed me an envelope with my name written on it in careful handwriting. "What is it?" "Read it and find out." I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Brina's handwriting was neat and precise, like everything else about her. "Conrad," the letter began, "I wanted to thank you for what you did at the wedding. I know it couldn't have been easy to expose your own wife's betrayal in front of all those people, but you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. I've had 3 months to think about that day, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. You didn't ruin my wedding. You prevented a marriage that was built on lies from ever happening in the first place." Derek and Alana would have continued their affair after the wedding. I would have spent years wondering why my husband seemed distant, why my best friend was always making excuses to spend time with him, why something felt wrong, even when everything looked perfect on the surface. Instead, I got to see the truth before it was too late. That's a gift, even if it didn't feel like one at the time. I'm doing well now. I've started a new job, made new friends, and I'm even dating someone who actually deserves my trust. None of that would have been possible if you hadn't had the courage to speak up when it mattered. So thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth when everyone else was content to let the lies continue. With gratitude, Brina. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. "She's really okay?" I asked. "She's better than okay," Nolan said. "She's happy, maybe for the first time in her adult life." "And Derek?" Last I heard, he was working at a strip mall dental clinic in Florida, making a quarter of what he used to make and living in a studio apartment. "And Alana? Does it matter?" He was right. It didn't matter. Whatever happened to Alana now was a consequence of her own choices, not my responsibility. I finished my drink and stood up to leave. "Nolan," I said as I put on my coat, "thanks for the help that night. I couldn't have done it without you." "Sure you could have," he said. "You just would have taken longer to get there." As I walked to my car, I thought about the man I'd been before that night on the rooftop. Trusting, forgiving, willing to believe the best in everyone. That man would have confronted Alana privately, would have tried to save his marriage through counseling and compromise. That man would have let Derek marry Brina while continuing to cheat on her with her best friend. That man was weak. The man I'd become was harder, colder, more calculating. But he was also someone who protected the innocent and punished the guilty. Someone who valued truth over comfortable lies and justice over false peace. I could live with being that man. My phone buzzed as I got into my car. A text message from an unknown number. Dr. Bishop, this is Sarah Chen. I hope you don't mind me reaching out, but I wanted to check in and see how you're doing. If you ever want to talk about what happened or how it's affected you, I'm here. No judgment, just professional support if you need it. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations weren't worth having. 6 months later, I was walking through the hospital corridor when I bumped into Dr. Martinez, the surgeon who had covered for me the night I decided to skip the emergency call. Conrad, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. I haven't seen you around much lately. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said. Busy, but fine. I heard about what happened with your wife. That must have been rough. It was what it was. Martinez studied my face for a moment, probably trying to read my emotional state. He was a good doctor, but a terrible poker player. You know, he said carefully, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. Divorce is never easy, even when it's the right choice. I appreciate that, I said, but I'm doing fine. You sure? Because you seem different, harder somehow. Maybe that's not a bad thing. He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. Maybe not, he agreed. Just don't lose yourself completely, okay? The world needs doctors who still give a damn. I still give a damn, I said. I just give a damn about different things now. That evening, I was finishing up my notes when my pager went off. Emergency surgery, trauma unit. A young woman had been in a car accident and needed immediate reconstructive work on her face. As I scrubbed in, I thought about what Martinez had said about not losing myself completely, about being a doctor who still gave a damn. He was wrong about one thing, though. I hadn't lost myself. I'd found myself. The surgery took 4 hours, delicate work that required complete focus and steady hands. When it was over, the young woman's face was saved. She would have some scarring, but she would be able to smile again, to look in the mirror without flinching. As I cleaned up and prepared to leave, her father approached me in the hallway. Doctor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. The other surgeon said it couldn't be done, that the damage was too extensive. But you saved her. That's what I do, I said simply. No, he said, shaking his head. That's who you are. Maybe he was right. Maybe, beneath all the calculation and coldness, I was still the same man who had dedicated his life to healing people. The same man who couldn't stand by and watch innocent people get hurt. The difference was that now I understood that sometimes healing required cutting away the diseased tissue, even when it was painful. Sometimes protecting the innocent meant punishing the guilty, even when it was brutal. Sometimes justice looked like revenge and mercy looked like truth. I drove home through the quiet streets, thinking about the choices I'd made and the man I'd become. In the distance, I could see the lights of the country club where Derek and Brina's wedding reception should have been happening if things had gone according to plan. Instead, Derek was probably finishing up his shift at that strip mall dental clinic, counting the days until he could afford a better apartment. Alana was somewhere across the country, trying to rebuild a life that I'd systematically destroyed. And Brina was happy, free to find real love with someone who deserved her trust. The scales were balanced. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a car parked across the street, a black sedan with tinted windows, engine running. For a moment, I wondered if Derek had finally worked up the courage to confront me face to face. But as I watched, the car pulled away and disappeared around the corner. Probably just someone picking up a friend, nothing more dramatic than that. Inside the house, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Clean, organized, quiet. No signs of the chaos that had once defined my life, no reminders of the woman who had shared this space for 8 years. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my office, looking at the empty picture frames where photos of Alana and me used to sit. I'd thrown them away months ago, along with everything else that reminded me of the man I used to be. My computer chimed with a new email. The return address made me pause. BriannaPeters@gmail.com. I clicked it open. Conrad, I hope this message finds you well. I know we haven't spoken since the wedding, and I wasn't sure if I should reach out, but I felt like there were things that needed to be said. First, I want you to know that I don't blame you for what happened that day. I know some people think you were cruel or vindictive, but I understand why you did it. You could have told me privately, could have handled it quietly, but then Derek and Alana would have just been more careful. They would have found ways to continue their affair without getting caught. By exposing them publicly, you made sure their relationship was over permanently. You also made sure that everyone knew the truth about who they really were, which means other people won't make the mistake of trusting them the way we did. I wanted to tell you something else, too. I'm getting married again. Next month to a man named James, who is everything Derek pretended to be. Kind, honest, faithful. He makes me laugh, and more importantly, he makes me feel safe. I never would have found him if I had married Derek. I would have spent years in a false marriage, wondering why I felt so empty, never knowing that my husband was cheating on me with my best friend. So thank you for giving me the chance to find real happiness instead of settling for a beautiful lie. I hope you find happiness too, Conrad. You deserve it. With love and gratitude, Brina P.S. Nolan tells me you've been working extra shifts at the hospital, throwing yourself into your career. That's good, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. The world needs more people like you. People who are willing to tell the truth, even when it's painful. I read the email twice, then printed it out and put it in my desk drawer. Someday, when I was old and gray and wondering if I'd made the right choices, I would read it again and remember why I'd done what I'd done. The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Unknown number, probably a telemarketer. Hello? Dr. Bishop? The voice was male, nervous. This is Derek Mallory. I almost hung up, but curiosity kept me on the line. What do you want, Derek? I wanted to apologize for everything, for what I did to your marriage, to Brina, to you. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Okay. That's it. Just okay? What did you expect me to say? That I forgive you? That we should get together for drinks and laugh about old times? No, I thought maybe we could talk, man to man, try to work things out. There's nothing to work out, Derek. You made your choices, and now you're living with the consequences, just like I'm living with mine. But the way you handled it, he said, his voice getting more agitated, destroying my career, my reputation, my entire life. Don't you think that was excessive? No. No? That's it? You want to know what I think was excessive? I said, my voice getting colder. Screwing my wife while planning to marry her best friend. Leading Brina to believe you loved her while you were laughing about her behind her back. Using your position at the hospital to help Alana steal patient information so you could poach referrals. That was excessive. We never meant for anyone to get hurt. But people did get hurt. Brina got hurt. I got hurt. And you did it anyway because you thought you were smarter than everyone else. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too. So you decided to play God, to ruin our lives because we made a mistake? I didn't ruin your lives, I said. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd already done to yourselves. This isn't over, Derek said, his voice turning ugly. You think you can destroy people and just walk away? There are consequences for what you did, Conrad, and someday you're going to pay for them. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you the truth. What goes around comes around, and you have a lot of bad karma coming your way. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll be able to sleep at night. I hung up and blocked his number. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, the police department. Dr. Bishop, this is Detective Williams. We need to ask you some questions about a threatening phone call that was reported tonight. What kind of threatening phone call? Someone called in a bomb threat to the hospital, specifically mentioning your name, said you had enemies who were going to make you pay. We traced the call to a phone registered to Derek Mallory. I sat back in my chair, not entirely surprised. What do you need from me, Detective? We're going to arrest Mr. Mallory for making terrorist threats, but we wanted to let you know and to ask if there's any history between you two that might explain why he'd do something this stupid. There's history, I said, but nothing that would justify threatening to bomb a hospital. Can you come in tomorrow morning to give a statement? Of course. After I hung up, I poured myself another whiskey and thought about Derek's words. What goes around comes around. Maybe he was right. Maybe someday my actions would catch up with me, but not today. The next morning, I gave my statement to Detective Williams, a tired-looking man in his 50s who had probably seen every kind of human stupidity imaginable. And Mr. Mallory is claiming that you orchestrated a campaign of maltreatment against him, he said, reading from his notes. Says you destroyed his career and his marriage out of spite. Mr. Mallory destroyed his own career and marriage, I replied. I just made sure the truth came to light. By exposing his affair at his wedding? By giving his bride the information she needed to make an informed decision about her future? Detective Williams looked at me for a long moment, probably trying to decide if I was a sufferer or a suspect. "Dr. Bishop," he said finally, "I have to ask, do you have any regrets about how you handled this situation?" "None whatsoever. Even knowing that it led to Meister Mallory making terrorist threats against the hospital where you work? Derek Mallory chose to make those threats. That's on him, not me." "Fair enough." Williams closed his notebook and stood up. "We'll be holding Mr. Mallory for 72 hours while we investigate. If he's convicted, he's looking at serious jail time for the bomb threat alone." "Good." As I left the police station, I felt a strange sense of closure. Derek's final desperate attempt to hurt me had only succeeded in destroying what was left of his own life. The bomb threat charge would follow him forever, making it even harder for him to rebuild his career or his reputation. Some people never learned. That afternoon, I was checking on patients when my pager went off again. Another emergency, another chance to save someone's life. As I scrubbed in for surgery, I thought about the conversation with Detective Williams. Regrets? No, I had no regrets. The man I used to be might have handled things differently. He might have tried to save Derek and Alana from themselves, might have forgiven and forgotten and hoped for the best. But that man was naive, weak, blind to the truth that some people couldn't be saved from their own choices. The man I'd become understood that justice sometimes required harsh measures, that protecting the innocent sometimes meant punishing the guilty, that the truth, no matter how painful, was always better than a comfortable lie. As I worked to repair the damage from another car accident, another senseless tragedy that could have been prevented if someone had made better choices, I thought about the cosmic balance of things. Derek and Alana had made their choices. They had chosen deception over honesty, selfishness over loyalty, short-term pleasure over long-term commitment. I had made my choices too. I had chosen truth over comfort, justice over mercy, protection of the innocent over preservation of relationships. If that made me cold, calculating, ruthless, so be it. The world had enough naive optimists. It needed more people who were willing to hold others accountable for their actions. The surgery was successful. Another life saved, another family spared the grief of unnecessary loss. As I cleaned up and prepared to go home, I thought about Brina's email, about her new marriage, her new happiness, her gratitude for the painful gift I'd given her on what should have been the worst day of her life. That was what made everything worthwhile. Not the destruction of Derek and Alana, but the salvation of someone who had deserved better. I drove home through the quiet streets, past the country club where it all began, past the coffee shop where Nolan had given me the evidence I needed, past the church where I'd delivered the truth like a surgical strike to the heart of a beautiful lie. My house was dark and empty when I arrived, just as it had been for months now. But the emptiness no longer felt like loss. It felt like possibility. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my office, looking at the space where Alana's pictures used to hang. Tomorrow I would have new patients to heal, new lives to save, new opportunities to do good in the world. And if someone else tried to hurt innocent people, tried to build their happiness on lies and deception, I would be ready for them too, because that's who I was now. Dr. Conrad Bishop, healer and protector, truth teller, and guardian of justice. I could live with that man. I raised my glass in a silent toast to the future, to the choices that had brought me here, and to the man I'd become. Then I drank and planned and waited for the next time the world would need someone willing to tell the truth, no matter what it cost. The end.